I have always believed that memory is a kind of engine. Cylinders fire whenever a smell, a street lamp, or a half-forgotten song reminds you who you used to be. The earliest cylinder in my block belongs to my brother Ethan. He is 3 years older, taller by only an inch that he guards as if it were crown property, and gifted with the rare talent of turning acquaintances into allies before they even notice the transaction. When we were children, we built cardboard cities in the attic. Ethan organized parades for paperclip soldiers while I hid behind the scenery counting how many load-bearing walls we could remove before the structure sagged. That was our rhythm, his spectacle, my reinforcement. Our parents laughed and said we made a good team. They never imagined that, decades later, the same division of labor would fracture a family dinner table. Valerie Hughes arrived in my life 15 summers later carrying a folio of watercolor paper and wearing jeans splattered with vermilion dots like impatient constellations. We met in the fabrication lab at the University of Connecticut, where I was calibrating a laser cutter for a robotics project and she was hunting for scrap plexiglass to use as improvised light diffusers. She asked whether the bluish film on the offcuts would affect paint adhesion, and I answered with an 8-minute lecture that made her laugh so hard she accidentally reset the machine interface. I apologized. She teased me for using graduate-level vocabulary to impress a stranger, and by sunset we were debating the merits of marmalade versus grape jelly over diner pancakes. I mistook that easy conversation for fate. For the next 11 months we stitched our schedules together. Cafeteria breakfasts, midnight museum rides, slow walks across campus under snow that turned our scarves into feathery armor. Everything tilted at the 4th of July barbecue behind my parents' weather-beaten colonial. The yard smelled of lighter fluid, scorched corn husks, and hydrangeas clinging to the last shade. Dad tended a grill large enough to roast a small planet. Mom retrieved folding chairs from the garage. Neighborhood kids launched whistling fireworks over the koi pond. Valerie stood beside me holding a lemonade that kept sweating down her wrist. Ethan arrived late, stepping out of a rental BMW with sunglasses that mirrored the sky so perfectly it looked as though he had sliced the horizon into two neat rectangles. Introductions took seconds, yet I felt something rearrange itself in the atmosphere when they shook hands. Valerie complimented his cufflinks, tiny glass gears spinning inside brass housings, and Ethan pivoted smoothly into stories of medical device triumphs, London conferences, bonus structures. By the time fireworks painted the night indigo and white, he was asking if she would like a tour of his office sometime. I should have intervened, but the grill sparkled in my peripheral vision like a silent alarm, and I ignored it. The following weeks tasted like reheated coffee. Valerie canceled a planned road trip to Acadia, citing a freelance commission that required weekend studio hours. Our text exchanges grew shorter, filled with polite exclamation marks that read like placeholders for genuine warmth. One rainy Thursday, she asked to meet outside the art building. Her umbrella was missing a spoke. Rivulets of water trailed down her cheeks. She confessed that she and Ethan had been talking, that talking had become coffee, and coffee had become a kiss she did not expect. She said Ethan's confidence felt like standing next to a bonfire after years of candlelight. I heard the apology pulsing beneath every word, but my ears translated only the ache. I told her I understood, and I even believed it for 9 heroic seconds before the world blurred. 8 months later, I attended their wedding in a stone chapel draped with white roses and confusion. Sunlight poured through stained glass depicting saints I no longer trusted. I sat 3 pews back, clapped at the vows, toasted with sparkling cider, and steadied their getaway car while bridesmaids tied soda cans to the bumper. A photographer snapped me smiling so wide my gums showed, as if I were advertising toothpaste instead of heartbreak. That smile later earned a spot in my parents' living room collage, proof that I could play the role of supportive sibling on cue. That night I drove home alone, opened a blank document, and wrote 3 sentences of melodramatic poetry about smoke, shattered timetables, and the geometric silence left behind when 2 lives fuse without permission. Then I closed the file and applied to graduate school in Chicago. Chicago greeted me with wind sharp enough to file bone. I rented a studio apartment above a bakery that started rolling dough at 4 in the morning, so my alarm became the smell of rising yeast and cinnamon. The floorboards creaked like scared violins, the radiator hissed like a tired stagehand, and the L train rattled past my window with such punctual fury that I learned to pause phone calls mid-sentence. Days dissolved inside the university's engine dynamics wing, where I reverse-engineered alternators, machined turbine housings from billet aluminum, and tried to convince funding boards that passion could substitute for experience. When grants fell through, I moonlighted at a garage in back of the yards, tuning turbocharged imports for clients who treated dyno sheets like medical reports. Weekends I volunteered at a bike repair clinic under the Red Line Viaduct, teaching kids to true wheels using improvised jigs cut from scrap shelving. Chicago was loud, impatient, abrasive, but it did not ask who I had failed to keep. That made all the difference. 5 years slipped by in a blur of compressor maps and espresso steam. I finished my master's degree, accepted a position at a startup designing hybrid powertrains for boutique automakers, and spent nights rewriting white papers until they carried the cadence of manifestos. The market rewarded obsession, salary bumps, patent bonuses, stock options that inflated faster than proofing dough in my old landlord's bakery. Yet my apartment remained furnished with folding chairs because every discretionary dollar disappeared into a high-interest account I nicknamed Marinello or Bust. After midnight, I toggled through Ferrari's online configurator like an insomniac gambler, weighing the moral implications of yellow versus black brake calipers, memorizing option codes, calculating the energy density difference between envy and anticipation. The vision of a scarlet machine idling beneath me was less a monument to spite than a promise to the version of myself who still believed dreams could outrun disappointments. The call arrived on a sun-starved November morning. My performance bonus had cleared, the dealership said, and the custom SF90 Straydale wearing Rosso Corsa paint and silver stitching was ready for delivery. I borrowed Marcus's pickup to transport myself. New owners do not arrive by taxi, and spend an hour pacing the showroom while technicians peeled protective film off carbon fiber like curators unveiling a fossil. The moment I pressed the starter button, the cockpit filled with a growl that sounded like thunder deciding to earn a PhD. Salespeople applauded, cameras flashed. And I piloted the car onto Lake Shore Drive feeling as though every traffic light had been programmed to celebrate my existence. I posted a single photo at sunrise. The Ferrari parked against steel blue water, its profile catching enough light to look unreal. Mom responded with heart emojis. Marcus chimed in with seatbelt demands. I did not tag Ethan. Silence lasted exactly 14 days. On a Saturday afternoon, while I performed the absurd ritual of polishing door handles that could blind satellites, my phone buzzed. Ethan flooded the screen. I let the call expire. A text followed. Hey little bro. Saw mom's pic, congrats on the Ferrari. Valerie and I are juggling daycare tuition, roof repairs, and one car that won't survive winter. Any chance you'd gift us your ride? We'd get more out of it. Family first, right? I stared at those pixels until they blurred into abstract art, then typed, you can't be serious. He responded instantly, totally serious. I was single with no dependents, while he had a growing family and client dinners in need of flair. He promised to pay for gas as if 98 octane were the main expense. The audacity blew past irritation and landed in the realm of comedy. I laughed so hard the microfiber towel slipped from my hand and floated to the floor like a rejected flag. Anger arrived later, stealthy as a hairline crack in tempered glass. I paced the apartment, cataloging every moment Ethan had leveraged charm at my expense, the time he accepted an award for our joint geology presentation, the day he sold my vintage comics at a garage sale to fund his prom limousine, the careless grin he wore when Valerie first laughed at one of his jokes. Memory became kindling. The Ferrari's idle rumble in the garage supplied the spark. Around midnight, I powered down the polishing lamps, opened a navigation app, and traced a bright blue line from Chicago to Hartford. 800 miles, 12 hours if traffic behaved, 15 if the weather turned spiteful. I told myself the distance would smooth anger into reflection, but I packed snow chains anyway, along with protein bars, an emergency blanket, and the peculiar bravery that blossoms once you decide a bridge can be burned because you've already taught yourself to swim. Dawn limped into view at the Indiana border, and the highway straightened into a ribbon that seemed to unspool directly from my chest. The Ferrari inhaled distance with a predator's calm. 2 electric motors whispered through school zones, then the combustion engine roared awake on empty stretches, all of it choreographed by algorithms that never needed sleep. Outside Toledo, I drank diner coffee so strong it tasted metallic, while a trucker in a denim jacket asked whether the car was real or CGI. In Pennsylvania, a lake-effect snow squall swallowed the freeway, reducing visibility to the length of a hood ornament. Traction control fluttered, wipers slapped, and for 20 white-knuckled minutes I considered whether revenge was worth a ditch. The storm broke near Scranton, revealing a sky bruised purple. With each passing mile, I rehearsed speeches, sarcastic monologues, stoic parables, until they merged into static. By dusk, Hartford's modest skyline rose above skeletal maples like a paused documentary frame, waiting for narration. Ethan's neighborhood was a mosaic of identical shutters and manicured indignation. I parked at the curb, engine ticking as heat bled into brittle air, and texted, outside. He emerged wearing athleisure and an expectant smile that widened at the sight of the car. Before he could speak, I stated my terms. He would gather Valerie and confess, in plain language, the entitlement coiled inside his request. If he managed that feat, I would hand over the keys. He blinked, stepped back, calculated whether charm could rewrite the moment, then called for Valerie. She opened the door in paint-stained leggings, her surprise genuine. Under the porch light, Ethan began a halting apology that soon spiraled into justifications. Valerie cut him off. "We don't want his car," she said. "We need accountability, not horsepower." The porch fell silent except for Ava's cartoon dingle floating from inside the house. I placed the keys on the mailbox and waited. Valerie surprised both of us by suggesting a short drive, just her and me, so Ethan could put Ava to bed and think about what sorry truly meant. We glided onto county roads where maple branches tangled overhead like questions without punctuation. For 10 minutes, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "I owe you an apology that is 5 years overdue." I told her I had rehearsed accepting it. She traced the dashboard's contrast stitch with one fingertip and admitted she had confused Ethan's volume for depth. We parked at Ridge Point Overlook, a cliff where city lights shimmered like coins at the bottom of a fountain. She gave me an unmailed postcard, a canoe on still water, captioned with her handwriting, "Peace cannot be stolen, only surrendered." I slipped it into the glove box and forgave her aloud, the way one forgives thunder for being loud. We returned to the house lighter, though the car weighed the same. Ethan met us on the porch holding a ceramic mug he did not drink from, steam penciling brief spirals into cold air. He apologized without disclaimers, cataloging trespasses in chronological order: the 6th grade science fair plaque, the sold comic books, the rooftop flirtation, the message that treated generosity like a vending machine. Each admission sounded like a plank landing on a dock, heavy but necessary. When he finished, the mug trembled. I believed him, if only because the performance streak in his voice had finally frayed. Rather than surrendering the Ferrari, I produced an envelope stamped with a Crimson Gear logo. Inside were plane tickets to Chicago, floor passes to an engineering expo, and a printed syllabus I had drafted, titled Internal Combustion and Internal Contrition. "Come visit," I said. "Learn why this machine matters and why, in the grand calculus, it doesn't at all." Ethan accepted, and for the first time since childhood, I saw my brother look small beneath a porch light. They visited in April. Chicago had thawed into puddles that mirrored skyscrapers like half-finished blueprints. We toured the Art Institute. Ava favored suits of armor while Valerie lingered in front of Hopper's Nighthawks, sketching the glow of neon onto a sticky note. At the engineering expo, Ethan listened, truly listened, as Marcus demonstrated a regenerating brake rotor forged from recycled alloys. That evening on my balcony, we ate deep dish pizza while gulls swooped overhead, shrugging at our human drama. Ethan asked how he could repay the hospitality. The question sounded different, no longer a transaction. I proposed a joint scholarship pairing art students with young engineers to build solar sculptures. Valerie lit up as though someone had offered her a blank wall and unlimited paint. Ethan ran the numbers on a napkin. Ava added a doodle of a rocket-powered Ferris wheel. The Ferris Future Fund was born before dessert. Demand for the scholarship ballooned. Applications arrived from towns I had never heard of, filled with sketches of wind-powered lanterns and essays about turning landfill scrap into drone components. Each envelope was a vote of confidence in a future I wanted to accelerate. One night in June, I stood in the garage staring at the Ferrari, red paint catching the glow of an overhead bulb, and realized the car had completed its mission. It had carried me from despair to agency. Now it could carry others. I contacted a boutique auction house that specialized in charity lots. They booked a theater, erected spotlights, and displayed the SF-90 on a slowly rotating platform that made it look almost mythic. The auctioneer's chant surged and fell like surf. Paddles shot upward, and the final hammer landed on a figure high enough to fund 3 years of grants. Relief flooded me like cool rain after track heat. Valerie painted commemorative posters of the car dissolving into fireflies that ignited a night sky. We mailed them to every bidder, along with thank you notes pinned in Ava's looping cursive. I replaced the supercar with a lime green electric hatchback whose previous owner had christened her Myrtle. Myrtle did not roar. She hummed a single-pitch lullaby that made city traffic sound like distant bees. Yet her cargo area could swallow crates of Arduino kits, rolls of canvas, and enough extension cords to wire a small carnival, which felt like the exact kind of speed I now wanted. Weekdays she ferried supplies to satellite workshops in neighborhoods lacking robust art programs. Weekends we parked at open-air markets where scholarship recipients demonstrated solar kinetic sculptures beside Valerie's traveling mural panels. Ethan managed logistics, designing checklists so meticulous he included a line item for backup inspiration snacks. Sometimes I caught him gazing at sports cars idling nearby, nostalgia rippling across his face, but he always turned back to answer the next student's question about torque versus thrust. Glamour hadn't disappeared, it had multiplied, refracting through every curious eye that circled our booths. Opportunity spirals outward, and in the 3rd year of the Ferris Future Fund, I received an email from an Italian consortium in Medina. They were developing ultralight battery casings and wanted my input on thermal runaway scenarios. The offer included a modest apartment above a bakery, which felt hilariously on-brand, and enough salary to keep the scholarship solvent in my absence. Valerie urged me to accept. Ethan argued that fresh perspectives grow in foreign soil. Ava just wanted me to send gelato reviews. I flew east with one suitcase, a hard drive full of simulation data, and a letter from Mom reminding me that a moving part lasts longer than a rusting one. Medina smelled of espresso, jasmine, and engine oil. I spent mornings inside a renovated barn where CNC mills shared space with nesting swallows, afternoons in design charrettes arguing about heat sinks, and evenings riding a borrowed Vespa through vineyards that glowed like circuitry under the setting sun. During a prototype test day at the Autodromo di Medina, engineers asked me to pilot a battery-electric concept sedan for journalists. The track surface simmered in summer heat. The only sound inside the cockpit was wind unraveling around side mirrors. Halfway through the lap, I realized I was smiling, not the brittle smile from the wedding photo, but a relaxed curve built from present tense. The car set a class record, cameras flashed, and someone handed me a bottle of Lambrusco that stained my gloves purple. That night, beneath a terrace strung with paper lanterns, I video-called the Chicago studio. The students crowded the frame, holding up a banner that read, "Energy is a story you can steer." Ethan translated comments from donors. Valerie displayed a new pigment sample shimmering like molten copper. Ava demanded a tour of every Italian bakery in alphabetical order. I fell asleep believing momentum could be humane. I returned stateside in late November, stepping into O'Hare's fluorescent glare with a suitcase full of espresso beans and prototype sketches. Ethan, Valerie, and Ava met me at arrivals, holding a cardboard sign that said "Welcome back, Spark Plug." We drove to the studio in Myrtle, the hatchback wheezing happily under luggage weight. Inside, students had installed programmable LEDs that pulsed in time with a remix of the Heartbeat Sensor project. When the music paused, Valerie revealed a new mural, interlocking gears blossoming into lilies, each petal inscribed with the name of a scholarship recipient. The room smelled of fresh paint and solder flux, a blend I now associate with redemption. After the celebration, Ethan and I stepped onto the fire escape. Snow drifted across the alley, catching orange streetlight halos. He asked whether I missed the Ferrari. I answered truthfully, I missed the roar, but not the weight. He nodded, understanding that the heaviest engines are often invisible. People sometimes ask what lesson hides inside our tangled timeline. I tell them a sports car taught me to accelerate toward other people instead of away from them, and that apologies, like pistons, work best when they move in opposite directions yet share a common crankshaft. More practically, I have learned that a single reckless text can ignite a sequence neither luck nor logic could predict, and that the distance between selfishness and stewardship is exactly 800 miles, driven overnight through a blizzard. Most days, though, I don't think about lessons. I think about the whir of Myrtle's electric motor as we carry fresh supplies to a school gym, the hush that falls when a student powers up a sculpture and a petal of light unfolds for the first time. The satisfied grin on my brother's face when paperwork balances, and Valerie's laugh floating above it all like high-octane fuel converted into music. That sound is my new engine, and I will keep it tuned for as long as these cylinders fire. A framed printout of Ethan's infamous text hangs above my desk. One bold request, one blunt refusal. I keep it not as a trophy but a compass. The letters are fading, yet the lesson stays clear: generosity without accountability is just dressed-up theft. When the vent stirs the paper, it clicks like a metronome, reminding me to set a cleaner beat before each new project. It steadies pulse like a tachometer steadies engine.